test one too.
It's not that early. Where is everybody?
Yeah.
It's very slow during the summer. Yeah.
We usually use one mic.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Cheryl, she put two mics on the end table, but I don't know if you really wanted to.
Yeah, no, we'll just use the second one during the Torah service.
Okay, I have actually two extras now.
Great,
then.
great,
Okay,
perfect,
just in case.
perfect. Okay, yeah,
I'll
that's
detail
fine.
it now.
Great,
Okay.
perfect, yeah. Oh man, it's hot.
I know.
Nice in the shade.
Yeah, it's nicer. Yeah. It's still not very cool.
Do you have water up there?
They'll bring it out in a second.
Yeah. Can I talk trope with you while we're waiting?
Sure.
So, you know there's different tropes.
Uh-huh.
There's the Binder trope,
Uh-huh.
which I've learned was set down by a
tune, yeah.
in regular services.
Yeah,
And then there's high holiday variations, of course.
Right.
But I'm not going to bring it up at all. If I was teaching kids, I would show them the differences.
Yeah, sure.
And then I'm going to go right into V'ahavta.
Nice. That's great.
I'm obsessed with tropes, so.
It's good. It's good. It's good to have a meaningful hobby.
Yeah.
That's great.
Right.
Nachamu. Who? Who? Oh, nice. But they're going to library, man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're coming over here to eat. But they
Oh.
didn't want to make an announcement because we didn't take away from the anonymous, and they didn't want people to think that they're doing this big kiddush.
Okay.
Is it one kiddush?
Yeah.
You heard me. It's a nice kiddush. So
I
stay.
believe that Michael Becker is leading Shachar.
I don't
Do
leave
you have any interest in leading?
I don't know. I don't watch everybody.
Driving all this way, I'm going to get some food out of it.
I just got over COVID, but I don't have my taste buds yet.
Really? Oh.
No. I can taste garlic, salt, and certain things,
I've
but
never met anybody from
your
those things.
Rabbi's hummus yesterday?
Yeah.
We bought hummus at Haifa yesterday.
Oh.
I said, this is horrible.
Michael,
No,
you reading Torah?
Your hummus was
Okay.
so good, and I could taste it, my flavor.
Hello. Good to see you.
Hello. I'm the greeter. I've never
I
greeted.
will.
What do
Oh
I
my
do?
God.
Just stand over by the gate?
Oh, we have a greeter. Yes.
We do?
Bonnie, I guess.
Wonderful.
So nice.
I've
Yeah,
been here many
so
times. I've never greeted. I mean, I greet everybody all the time.
Yeah. You can stand over by the gate, and in fact, if you want to take the aliyot cards and just offer people
Okay.
an aliyah as they enter, we don't usually have a greeter, so usually I just put them over there. But that would
Okay.
be awesome because then
Okay.
people might take one.
Okay.
Thanks for greeting. You can just tell
Like
people.
Natalie, she's on the phone and helping.
You didn't greet me.
Well, you were busy when I came.
You can tell them to like take a siddur and take a chumash or whatever,
Yes.
and then if you want to just hold
And
those
how long
aliyot.
does one stay there? Half an hour?
I think stay
Till 10?
probably until like midway through Shachrit. I think you'll kind of feel. You probably don't have to. Well,
I
but-
just want to do it right, you know.
yeah.
Okay. I'll
Hector,
play
we
it by
good?
ear.
Make sure there's no overlap
Thank you.
Let me know.
Shalom to everybody.
What?
Let me know.
But there's leftover food. They're gonna save it for Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Hopefully you can see me. If you're watching digitally, I can't see you. But it's nice knowing that you're there. I always like hearing people tell me in the middle of the week, Rabbi, you couldn't see me, but I was watching on live stream. Nice to welcome you. We're going to begin Pesukei de Zimra, Birkot HaShachar. Page 99 in the Lev Shalem, 61 in the Sim Shalom, in the Slim Shalom, and then 2 in the Sim Shalom. Modehani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shehechezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha Modehani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shehechezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha. My soul has been returned to me as I wake with morning's light. A new day dawns, a page has turned. What a gift to be alive. Modehani lefanecha melech Shehechezarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha. We continue in the same place on page 99 in Lev Shalem, 63 in the Slim Shalom, 8 in the Sim Shalom. Reverse those. No, that was correct. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. 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 Ata barata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Ata barata, ata yitzarta, ata nefachta bi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. Continue with Birkot HaShachar, morning blessings. Page 103, 65 and 10. Sometimes we rush through these blessings and they're just syllables, and sometimes individual ones reach out to us. As I've been saying these blessings all week, because we say them on Shabbat and weekday, I've been focusing on the one that praises God, thanking God for raising those who are bent over, because my back went out early this week. It has not done that in about 5 years, and for about 72 hours I couldn't get from bent to straight. And so I was reaching out to the Holy One who helps us stand up straight. Right now, as you can see, I'm pretty vertical. But look for the blessing that speaks to whatever experience you're living through right now. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lesachvivina lavchim ben yom uben laila. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shasani betzalmo. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shasani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam abi sharumim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam roka aretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam hamichim mitzadei gaver. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam shasali kol tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam ozer sel b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam oter sel b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein layayef koach.
Amen. Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam asher
Utanenu hayom b'chol yom l'chen l'chesed rachmim b'nechem v'nechol roveinu v'timulenu chasadim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai gomel chasadim tovim li'amo Yisrael. We turn ahead to page 120 in Lev Shalem 81 in the Slim Shalom 50 in the Sim Shalom. Mizmor shir Chanukat habayit l'David arim chanak dilotan l'simach tov li Adonai lo yishivat li rota eni Adonai v'erev yalin bechi v'laboker v'rinal. Eilecha Adonai ekra ve'el Adonai va'et chana. Eilecha Adonai ekra ve'el Adonai et chana. Shema Adonai v'choneini. Adonai ozeli. Shema Adonai v'choneini. Adonai Shema Adonai bechoneni. Adonai yozer li. Shema Adonai bechoneni. Adonai ozer li. Hafachtem b'spiri l'macholi b'tak t'saki b'ten tazeni simcha l'mani z'mercha chala b'loi don Adonai lo hai lelam odeka. Hector, how many faces do you see on Zoom? That's not us. 6, 7?
7.
Okay, so we have a minion including Zoom. Mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Atom, page 121, 82, and 52. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba.
Amen.
V'alma divrach yerutei v'amlich malchutei v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael v'agalav v'zman kari v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shemei Rabba mevorach l'amel maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei dekudesha b'richu. Leila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'meru Amen.
Amen.
Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Oseh shalom v'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Amen.
Please rise, Baruch Shamar. Baruch Shamar v'ya olam Baruch hu. Baruch gozer mekayim, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al hareh, Baruch mishalem sachar tov. Yachid cheolamim, Melech meshubach umfor deit shemo agado, Baruch atah Adonai, Melech mehulal batishbachot. May be seated. Hodunai kiru vishmo. Top of 125 in the left shalom, 85 in the slim shalom, 58 in the sim shalom. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. 128, 88, or 62 will pick up in the middle of that paragraph. David bashana totamalef nevemach vegasher vayalach avaracha tanai b'cholit tamid edogafi. Lechuvanim shimuli yiratanai lamedchem mi ya'ish echafetz chayim ohev yamim liroto. Shechafetz chayim ohev yamim lirot tov. Mi ya'ish shechafetz chayim ohev yamim lirot tov. Chafetz chayim ohev yamim lirot tov. Netzor, netzor leshoncha meira usefatecha midaber mir masur meira. Vasetov bake shalom berodfeu. Netzor, netzor, leshoncha meira, usefatecha, midaber mir, masur meira, baseto, bake shalom berodfeu. Bake shalom berodfeu. Temote rasha ra'av v'sonei tzadik yeshem u'poderna nefesh avadav v'lo yeshmu kol hachosim bo. Please rise 132, 92, or 72. Hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chasto. Hodu, hodu le'Elohei ha'Elohim ki le'olam chasto. Hodu, hodu l'Adonai ha'Adonim ki le'olam chasto. Hodu, hodu l'Adonai ki tov ki le'olam chasto. Notein lechem l'chol basar ki le'olam chasto. Hodu le'el hashamayim ki le'olam chasto. Maybe seated Psalm for Shabbat, page 134, around 94 and around 75 in other sidurs. Mizmor shir le'om haShabbat. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Ulezamer, ulezamer le'shimcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Ulezamer, ulezamer le'shimcha elyon. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Lehagid baboker chastecha. Lehagid baboker chastecha. V'emunatcha baleilot. V'emunatcha baleilot. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Alei asor v'alei navel. Alei asor v'alei navel. Alei gayon bechinor. Alei gayon bechinor. Tov lehodot l'Adonai. Odinuvun b'seivad shenim ranim liyu lagik yashar Adonai tzuri v'lo v'latabo Adonai malaki ulavish l'vishnei osi tazar. Eidotecha nemnu meod leveitcha na bakodesh Adonai leorech yamim Adonai leorech yamim Ashrei 136.96 or 81 Ashrei Yoshevei Beitecha Od Yelucha Selef Potecha Chedecha Maspi V'anachnu nevarech ya Me'ata v'yad olam Me'ata v'yad olam Me'ata v'yad olam Hallelujah 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 139 page 99 or page 86 Hallelujah 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 Adonai min hashamayim Hallelujah b'meromim Hallelujah chol malachav Hallelujah kol tzevav Hallelujah shemesh ve'yareach Hallelujah kol kochvei or Hallelujah shmei hashamayim ve'amayim asher me'al hashamayim Hallelujah et shem Adonai ki utziva v'nivra'u v'yamidem le'ad le'olam chok natan v'lo yavor Hallelujah et shem Adonai ki utziva v'nivra'u v'yamidem le'ad le'olam chok natan v'lo yavor Hallelujah 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 V'hayaram Karen liyamo tilal chocha sidal v'nei shalom kravo Hallelujah page 141 page 100 or page 88 Hallelujah Hallelujah b'kachol u'berkiya Hallelujah tziltzilei shama Hallelujah tziltzilei trua kol anashamat aliyah Hallelujah kol anashamat aliyah Hallelujah Baruch Adonai le'olam amen Yamim Baruch Adonai v'tzinu U'baroshen k'vodei le'olam v'melech v'tekol ha'aretz Amen v'amen. Please rise. Vayivarech David. Adonai kol Ve'osher v'yakavim b'fanach v'tam Hashem. Hatahu Adonai Elohim asher bacharta b'Avram v'yotzitu mirakastim v'samta shmo Avraham u'matzata levavo ne'eman lefanecha v'charoti u'arbi l'keid. הים בקעת לפניהם ויעברו בתוך הים ביבשה ואת רודפיהם ישלח צבים צולות כמו אבן במים עזים ויושר נא ביום וירא ישראל את היד הגדולה אשר עשתה במצרים ויראו העם את אדוני ויאמינו באדוני ומשה עבדו אז ישיר משה סוס ורחפו רמה וים עוזי וזמרת ויהי לי לישועה עוזי וזמרת ויהי לי לישועה עוזי וזמרת ויהי לי לישועה עוזי וזמרת ויהי לי לישועה. מי כמוך בלעני מי כמוך בלעני אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד כי לאדוני ימלוך משה בגויים ועלו משים בארץ ציון לשפוט את הר עשיו והייתה לאדוני מלוכה והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. You may be seated for Nishmat 145, 104 or 334. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu Yadai Yilufinu malay shiraka yamoshonenu rinakamon galabis of the Mi yitmelach umi yishvelach umi yaroch lach Ayal הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון קונה שמיים וארץ נלחן אשבחך ונפארך נברך את שם קודשך כאמור לדוד ברכי נפשי את אדוני בכל קרבי את שם קודשו האל בתעצומות עוזך הגדול בכבוד שמך הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורותיך המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא. We continue with Shachrit, Shochen Ad 147, 105, or 336.
Shochen Ad Maharam V'Kadosh Shemo Behefi Yesharim Titala Uvdivrei Tzadikim Titbarach Shochen Ad Maharom V'Kadosh Shemo Shochen Ad Maharom V'Kadosh Shemo Uvilshon Chasidim Titromam Uvekerev Kedoshim Titgadash Shochen Ad Maharom V'Kadosh Shemo Shochen Ad Maharom V'Kadosh Shemo Uv'makalot Rivavot Amchavit Yisrael להודות, להלל, לשבח, לפאר, רמם, להדל, לברך, להלל, לקלס, על כל דברי שירו ותשבחות, דוד בן ישי, עבדך משיחך.
Please rise, ישתבח שמך, לעד מלכנו. על המלך הגדול והקדוש ושמר וזכיר לך נעדנה. ברכות והודעות מעתה ועד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני אל מלך גדול בתשבחות, אל ההודעות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים. אמן.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ועמד דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ויומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן.
אמן. יהי שמר במבורך, לעולם המיה יתברך.
יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקדושה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן והמה, ואמרו
Amen. We're about to say the Baruch Hu on 149, 107, or 340, after which may be seated through the Shema and the Amidah. We'll do the Amidah as a Hecha Kedusha, which means we'll all begin the brachot together out loud. We'll do the Kedusha responsively and then continue to ourselves in a quiet whisper.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch et Adonai le'machal ha'mitzvah. Aseh shalom v'ret hakol hakol yidecha v'kodesh v'chol v'en kol v'kadosh Adonai kol ha'potach v'chol adolot asher mizrachu. Hamilat v'dalim v'lever chol v'chol v'kadosh v'en. אין כערכך, אדוני אלוהינו בעולם הזה, ואין זולתך מלכנו לחיי עולם הבא. אפס בלתך גואלנו לימות המשיח, ואין דומה לך, מושיענו לתחיית המתים. אל אדון הכל המעשים, ברוך ומבורך, בפי כל נשמה, גאולו וטובו מלא עולם. Ka'am da'at utfuna sovevim oto Hamitkah hayat takon Neder bechavod ala merkava Zechud umishor lifnei chiso Chesed verachamim lifnei chvodo Tovim meorot shebara Eloheinu yetzaram bedat Bevina ufaskel koach ugvura Natan bahem lion moshlim bekerev tevel Meleim zivum fikim noga Naezivam cholam Semechim betzitam Vesasim bevoam Osim behem aratzon konam Pe'er vechavod notnim lishmot Sola verina Zechem achuto Kara l'shemesh Vayizrach ora'a Vehit kitzurat הלבנה שבח נותנים לו קוצם ומרום תפארת וגדולה שרפים ואופנים וחיות הקודש לאל אשר שבת מכל המעשים ביום השביעי תלש ושמע כיסא כבודות תתברך מושיענו אשבך מעשה ידיך ועל מאורי אור שעשית יפרוך הסלע תתברך צורנו מלכנו ולנו ברוך קדושים ישתבח שמך למלכנו יוצר משך כולם אהובים, כולם ברורים, כולם גיבורים, וכולם עושים בהמה ובירא רצון קונם, וכולם פותחים את פיהם בקדושה וטהרה, בשירה וזמרה, ומברכים ומשבחים, ומפארים ומריצים ומקדישים וממליכים, את שם האל, המלך הגדול והגיבור והנורא, הקדוש הוא וכולם מקבלים מלך. כולם כאחד עונים ואומרים בהירה קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלוך כל הארץ כבודו והפנים וחיות הקודש ברעש גדול מנסים לעומת צרפים לעומתה משבחים ואומרים ברוך אדוני ממקומו לברך נמות תתנו למלככם אור חדש הציון תהיר ונזכה לנו מהרה לאורו ברוך אתה אדוני יוצר המאורות אהבה רבה אהבתנו אדוני אלוהינו חמוד לשמוע ללמוד וללמד לשמוע ולעשות לקיים הכל דברי תורה דרכך ולבן והביאנו לשלום מארבע כנפות הארץ ותוליכנו קוממיות לארצנו כי אל פועל ישועות אתה ובנו בחרת מכל עם ולשון וקרבתנו לשמך הגדול סלע באמת להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר עמו ישראל באהבה שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך וים שמות תשמע. Adonai Elohechem emet v'yasivechem v'yashem לדור והדור הוא קיים ושמו קיים וכיסו נכון ומלכותו ואמונתו לעד קיימת ורב חיים וקיימים נענים ונחמדים. אמת שאתה הוא אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו מלכנו מלך אבותינו גואלנו גואל אבותינו יוצרנו יוצר ישועתנו פודנו מצילנו מלאם שמך אין אלוהים זולתך עזרת אבותינו אתה הוא מעולם מגנו משיח אלוהינו מחמנו. Tehillah le'elyon baruch hu mevorach Moshe hu b'nei Yisrael lechanu shira b'simcha rabba ve'amru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh norat tehilot osefel le'shira chadasha shibchu geolim le'shimecha sefat hayam yacha kulam hoduvim lichu ve'amru Adonai imlach le'olam va'ed yanai nanai yanai nai yanai nanai nai yanai nanai nai tzur Yisrael kuma be'ezrat Yisrael uvteichinu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael Kohalenu Adonai tzvaot shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Kahal Yisrael Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ve'hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'konei Hakol Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot U'mevi Goel Livnei V'neihem Le'man Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mechayei Metim Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechakel Chaim Bechesed Mechayei Metim Berachamim Rabim Zomech Noflim Verofech Cholim Uma melech Yeshua v'ne'eman ata lehachayot metim. Baruch atah Adonai mechayei hametim. Nekadesh shimcha b'olam keshem shemati shemata b'shmei marom. Kakatuv hayad neviyecha v'kara zeh el zeh ve'amar.
Kadosh Adonai, it's
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech La'aretz Kevodo, Az Bekorash Gadol, Adir v'chazak mashmim kol, Mitnaseim leumat serafim, Lehumatam Baruch Yameru.
Baruch Adonai,
Baruch Adonai mimkomo, mimkomcha malkeinu tofia v'timloch aleinu ki mechakim anachnu lach matai timloch betzion bekar beyameinu. Le'olam va'ed tishkon titgadal v'titgadash b'toch Yerushalayim ircha ledor v'ador u'lenetzach netzachim v'einenu tirena malchutecha kadavar hamur b'shirei uzecha al yedei David meshiat tzidkecha.
David, Yimloch Ha'olam Ha'ishon Dovidor, Hallelujah.
Imloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Zion, ledor v'ador, Hallelujah. Ledor v'ador nagigol lecha netzach netzachim k'shechan hadish v'shichacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush olam va'ed ki hamelech kadosh v'kadosh atah Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh. Yismach Moshe If you have not yet finished your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. Kaddish Shalem is on page 167. יתגדל וקדש שם ברבה, והמד דברה קרותי בן לך מחותי בחייכנו ומכנו חיי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב וימרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם לא מהומיה, יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה ושמי דקודשה בריחו לעילם מכל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה וימרו, אמן. תתקבל צדיון ובטהון לכל ישראל קודם ובהון וישמעיה וימרו, אמן. יהי שלום הרבים שמעיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו, אמן. עושה שלום ברמיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל וימרו, amen. We'll begin the Torah service on page 168. Joey, do you want to lead?
Okay.
Joey will lead in honor of his birthday this past week. And page 168, hold on.
139 or 394 in the other Ziering.
Great.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein kemasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor v'ador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed Adonai ozamo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Avarachamim etiv avirtzonecha et Zion tivneh chomot Yerushalayim tivneh chomot Yerushalayim Ki v'cha levad batachnu melech il ram v'nisa adon olamim. Vayhi bin so Aharon vayomer Moshe kuma Adonai ve'afutzu yevecha ve'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha ki mitzion tetzei Torah ki mitzion tetzei Torah udvar Adonai mirushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato Rishmeh Demreal Lema. Behana rachetz v'lish meh kadisha kadisha yakira ana emar tushbechan behana rachetz v'lish meh kadisha kadisha yakira Ana emar tushbechan yehe rava kodamach detiv tachli bi beoraita v'tashli mishalin delibi veli badechol amach Yisrael letavu chayin veli shlam Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Gadolul Adonai Isi, Unromim Shemo Yachdav.
Lecha Adonai Hagidula V'Hagivura V'Hatiferet V'Hanesa V'Hahod Kicho V'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Kicho V'Shamayim. Let's try to turn this around. We're gonna read this way. Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu okay. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho Higadosh Adonai Eloheinu Shabbat shalom, everyone. Let me put these over there. Okay. We're going to begin our reading from Parshat V'Chanan. If you have the Eitz Chaim Chumash in front of you, page 1015. At the bottom of the page, verse 1. So we're going to jump right into the Aseret Tadiba, the Ten Commandments, which is the fourth aliyah of the full reading. This is the first aliyah of this section of the triennial reading. If you're following from home on a different chumash, is Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 5, starting with verse 1. V'yazor b'gimei shalachol chosim b'oven amar amen hakol havu godol hinenu chavod laTorah. Did you hand out?
Bonnie did.
Ta Yahamod, first aliyah, Yahamod. Pinchas Rachamim ben David Chaim lo yarishona baruch shenatan Torah l'moshe v'kedushato batem adbikim hayochem Chaim golchem hayom. Go far this way. This way. This way. So it should be Vayikra. Right? Baruch et Adonai Am Barak.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Am Barak Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bahar Banu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen. Vayikra Moshe Kol Yisrael Vayomer Alehem שמע ישראל אל החוקים ולמשפטים אשר אנוכי דובר באוזניכם היום ולמדתם אותם ושמרתם לעשותם. אדוני אלוהינו כרת עמנו ברית בחורף לעוד אבותינו כרת אדוני את הברית הזאת כי איתנו אנחנו אלה בו היום כולנו חיים פנים בפנים. דיבר אדוני עמכם בהר מתוך האש אנוכי עומד בין אדוני וביניכם בעת ההיא להגיד לכם את דבר אדוני כי יראתם מפני האש ולא עליתם בהר לאמור אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אשר הוצאתיך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. לא יהיה לך אלוהים אחרים על פניי לא תעשה לך פסל כל תמונה אשר בשמיים ממעל ואשר בארץ מתחת ואשר במים מתחת לארץ לא תשחווה להם ולא תעבדם כי אנוכי אדוני אלוהיך אלקנה פוקד עוון אבות על בנים ועל שלושים ורבעים לשונאי ועושה חסד לאלפים לאוהבי ולשומרי מצוותי. לא תישא שם אדוני אלוהיך לשווא כי לא ינקה אדוני את אשר יישא את שמו לשווא. שמור את יום השבת לקדשו כאשר ציווך אדוני אלוהיך. 6 ימים תעבוד ועשית כל מלאכתך ויום השביעי שבת לאדוני אלוהיך. לא תעשה כל מלאכה אתה ובנך וביתך ועבדך ואמתך ושורך וחמורך וכל בהמתך וגרך אשר בשעריך למען ינוח עבדך ואמתך כמוך וזכרת כי עבד היית בארץ מצרים ויוציאך אדוני אלוהיך משם ביד חזקה וזרוע נטויה. על כן ציווך אדוני אלוהיך לעשות את יום השבת. כבד את אביך ואת אמך כאשר ציווך אדוני אלוהיך למען יאריכון ימיך ולמען ייטב לך על האדמה אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך. לא תרצח ולא תנאף ולא תגנוב ולא תענה ברעך עד שווא ולא תחמוד אשת רעך ולא תתאווה פית רעך. שדהו ועבדו ואמתו שורו וחמורו וכל אשר לרעך.
Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chaya olam natan betohenu Baruch Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yeah, who's the second one? Ta'amod. Naomi bat Yitzchak uvela et aliyah shniya. Before we go to the second aliyah, I just want to pause a second. Eliana. I'm trying to think of how many verses of Torah you have read in this spot in the sanctuary in Pilch Hall in the years, probably even before you became bat mitzvah to this moment. How many times you have brought your enthusiasm for shul and for the tradition so that we could all benefit from how beautifully and how precisely you approach this. And it makes me bittersweet thinking about the transition that you're about to make, because this is Eliana's last Shabbat here in Los Angeles before she starts university. And of course, all we have is great pride and excitement that you're going off to bring your charm and your spark to the other Jewish communities you're going to meet. But it will be lessened here at Temple Beth Am and on this campus because we will not have you here nearly as regularly as we have in the past. And so I want to give you a Misha Berach to send you on your way as you go pursue knowledge and wisdom, and again, bringing your beautiful light to the communities that I know you're about to meet. Misha Berach Avateinu Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov Imotenu Sarivka Rachel v'Leah Yivarech et Eliana.
Bad Michael Benava, Shaltayom Lichvod Makom Lichvod HaTorah Lichvod HaShabbat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yishmor Otav Yatzileha Mikol Tzara V'Tzukah, Umikol Nego Machala V'Yatzlicheha B'Darka Liknot Chochma Binat Uvadad, V'Yishla Bracha V'Chatzlacha B'Chol Masei Yadaha, Im Kol Yisrael Acheha V'Nomar, Amen. Say Tech L'Shalom, go to college in peace, come back often, you always have a home here. Go Bears, yes. Second Aliyah can be found
on page 1021, verse 19.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach.
Baruch Adonai Mevarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. את הדברים האלה דיבר אדוני על כל קהלכם בהר, מתוך האש הענן והערפל קול גדול ולא יסף, ויכתבם על שני לוחות אבנים, ויתנם אלי, ויהי כשומעכם את הקול מתוך החושך וההר בוער באש, ותקרבון אלי כל ראשי שבטיכם וזקניכם, ותאמרו הן הראנו אדוני אלוהינו את כבודו וגודלו, וקולו שמענו מתוך האש, היום הזה ראינו כי ידבר אלוהים את האדם וחי, ועתה למה נמות כי תאכלנו האש הגדולה הזאת, אם יוספים אנחנו לשמוע את קול אדוני אלוהינו, עוד ומתנו כי מכל בשר אשר שמע קול אלוהים חיים מדבר מתוך האש, כמונו ויחי קרב אתה ושמע את כל אשר יאמר אדוני אלוהינו, ואת תדבר אלינו את כל אשר ידבר אדוני אלוהינו אליך, ושמענו ועשינו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chai olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen.
Nachman Dov, Ben, Chaim Reuven, Eliyash Shlishi.
Page 1022, verse 25.
Baruch et Adonai Hamavarach.
Baruch Adonai Mevarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Hamavarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'torah.
Amen. וישמע אדוני את קול kol divrechem bedaberchem elai vayomer Adonai elai shamati kol divrei ha'am hazeh asher dibru elecha eitivu kol asher diberu mitain v'aya levavam zeh lahem liyirauti v'lishmor kol mitzvotai kol hayamim למען ייטב להם ולבניהם לעולם לך אמור להם שובו לכם לא הולכם ואתה פה עמוד עמדי ואדברה אליך כל המצווה והחוקים והמשפטים אשר תלמדם ועשו בארץ אשר אנוכי נותן להם לרשתך ושמרתם לעשות כאשר ציווה אדוני אלוהיכם אכם לא תסורו ימין ושמאל בכל הדרך אשר ציווה אדוני אלוהיכם אתכם תלכו למען תחיון וטוב לכם ברכתם ימים בארץ אשר תירשון וזאת המצווה החוקים והמשפטים אשר ציווה אדוני אלוהיכם ללמדכם לעשות בארץ אשר אתם עוברים שמה לרשתך למען תירא את אדוני אלוהיך לשמור את כל חוקותיו ומצוותיו אשר אנוכי מצווך אתה ובנך ובן בנך כל ימי חייך ולמען יאריכון ימיך ושמעת ישראל ושמרת לעשות אשר ייטב לך ואשר תרבון מאוד כאשר דיבר אדוני אלוהי אבותיך לך ארץ זבת חלב ודבש.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam notan betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Page 1024, verse 4.
So just before we start this aliyah, you're about to hear the Shema and the Ve'ahavta. And for those of you who are here during Shacharit, I specifically sung the Ve'ahavta out loud, which we don't always do as part of Shabbat Shacharit services. But I knew that Rick would like it. He just gave me a thumbs up. So very validated by that. But also because part of what I think most people don't necessarily understand in terms of the way that we sing the Ve'ahavta is that we actually sing it to trope. So, for example, when I'm teaching kids how to read trope for the first time, I say to them, you actually know trope already. You just don't know that you know trope. Sing the Ve'ahavta for me. And they sing the Ve'ahavta, and though some of it is maybe a little bit different than the way that we would read trope for another aliyah, it's like 98% the same. And so they're seeing the symbols as well as the way in which you sing those trope symbols, to which for them is the Ve'ahavta song, right? Just the way that you sing it. So I wanted to point that out so that if you too have just been singing the Ve'ahavta song and not realizing that you're actually singing trope, that you can follow along with Rick. He will first sing the Shema in a little bit of a different song than the one that we sing. But then the Ve'ahavta will sound almost exactly the same as the way that we sing it, and you too will be singing trope.
Thank you, Rabbi. And if you know how to sing the Ve'ahavta, that means you could read Torah if you wanted to at some other point. So think about it. have to replace Eliana somehow.
Baruch Adonai Mevorach.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Baruch Olam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah.
Amen. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha ve'hayu advarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot ayadecha v'hayu letotafot beinenecha uchtavtam amezuzot beitecha uvisharecha.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam atah b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah. We're going to pause now for Amisha Berach, for Cholim, for all those who are in need of healing. So if there is anybody whose name you would like to recite that will not be recited as part of our community list, please rise. And as I pause in the middle of this bracha, please insert their names aloud so that you can hear their name and also those around you. Misha Beirach Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak Ve'Yakov Imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel Ve'Leah Hu Yivarech V'Yirapeh Et Zehava Yafa Bat Esther Ve'Rivka Bat Pesha Ve'T Yosef Menachem Mendel Ben Gittel Ve'T Yehuda Ben Avraham Ve'Sara Ve'T Ben Zion Ben Gittel Ve'T Elena Kramer Ve'T Cyril Chana Bat Sivia Ve'Risa Chana Bat Chasya Geula Ve'T Yehuda Yisrael Ben Leah Ve'T Mordechai Ben Esther Ve'Hudit Bat Rivka Ve'T Dani Benjamin Ben Tova Nurit Ve'T Taiba Bat Rachel Leah Ve'T Yoshua Ben Shendel Ve'T Bat Leah Bat Chaya Ve'T Rachel bat Shulami Pesach Yitzchak Elimelech, Vet Yosef Simcha ben Sarah Chana, Vet David Yosef ben Rivka, Vet Zipporah Liba bat Esther Chana, Vet Taiba bat Chaya, Vet Chana Zahava bat Sarah Freda, Vet Aden Ezra Chaim ben Devorah, Vet Tova bat Leah, Vet Shimon ben Chaya, Vet Meir ben Biriam, Vet Dalia bat Leah, Vet Drezel bat Yisrael, Vet Liron bat Ilan v'Chedva, Vet Anel Morales, Vet Jerry Berger, Vet Yaakov ben Ezad, Vet Avraham Yaakov ben Rivka. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yimale Rachamim Aleihem Lechazikam Lerafotam Veishlach Lehem Mehera Refuah Shlema Min Hashamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf B'toch She'er Cholim V'chazek Et Yedei Hoskim B'tzorcheihem Shabbatim Ilizok Urefuah Krova Lavo Hashtabag Alav Izman Kariv V'namar Amen. Refuah Shlema to all those in need of recovery.
We continue on page 1027, verse 10, very top.
Adonai Machem. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai notein haTorah.
V'haya ki yaviacha Adonai Elohecha el haaretz asher nishba lavotecha l'Avraham liYitzchak u'Yaakov לתת לך ערים גדולות וטובות אשר לא בנית, ובתים מלאים כל טוב אשר לא מילאת, ובורות חצובים אשר לא חצבת, כרמים וזיתים אשר לא נטעת, ואכלת ושבעת. הישמר לך פן תשכח את אדוני אשר הוציאך מארץ מצרים מבית עבדים. את אדוני אלוהיך תירא ואותו תעבוד, ובשמו תשבע. לא תלכון אחרי אלוהים אחרים מאלוהי העמים אשר סביבותיכם, כי אלקנה אדוני אלוהיך בקרבך פן יחרה. אף אדוני אלוהיך בך וישמירך מעל פני האדמה. לא תנסו את אדוני אלוהיכם כאשר ניסיתם במסע. שמור תשמרון את מצוות אדוני אלוהיכם ועדותיו וחוקיו אשר ציווך, ועשית הישר והטוב בעיני אדוני, למען ייטב לך. ובאת וירשת את הארץ הטובה אשר נשבע אדוני לאבותיך, להדוף את כל אויביך מפניך, כאשר דיבר אדוני.
אמת תורתנו הקדושה, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Page 1028, verse 20.
Baruch et Adonai hamvarach. Baruch Adonai hamvarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ki shalcha vincha machar le'mor ma'haidot v'hachukim v'hamishpatim asher tziva Adonai Eloheinu etchem v'yamarta levincha avadim hayinu lefaro b'mitzrayim vayotzienu Adonai mimitzrayim biyad chazaka vayitain Adonai ototu moftim gedolim v'ra'im במצרים, בפרעה ובכל ביתו לעינינו, ואותנו הוציא משם, למען הביא אותנו לתת לנו את הארץ אשר נשבע לאבותינו, ויצוונו אדוני לעשות את כל החוקים האלה, לירא את אדוני אלוהינו, לטוב לנו כל הימים, לחיותנו כהיום הזה, וצדקה תהיה לנו, כי נשמור לעשות את כל המצווה הזאת לפני אדוני אלוהינו כאשר ציוונו.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Page 1029, beginning of chapter 7.
Whoops. Baruch et Adonai hamborach. Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim, v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ki yiviacha Adonai Elohecha el haaretz asher ata vashama lerishta v'nashal goyim rabim mipanecha hachiti v'hagirgashi v'haemori v'hakanani v'haprizi v'hachivi v'haivusi shiva goyim rabim v'atzumi mimecha unitanam Adonai Elohecha lefanecha v'hikitam Hacharim tacharim otam lo tichrot lahem brit velo techanem velo titchatein bam bitcha lo titain livno uvito lo tikach livnecha ki asir et bincha meacharai ve'avdu Elohim acherim v'charaf Adonai bachem v'hishmidcha maher Ki imko ta'asu lahem mizbechotehem titotsu umatzevotam teshaberu va'asherehem tegadeun ufisilehem tisrafun ba'esh ki am kadosh ata ladonai Elohecha becha bachar Adonai Elohecha lihiolo le'am sigula mikol ha'amim asher al pnei ha'adama lo merubechem mikol ha'amim Chashak Adonai bachem vayivchar bachem ki atem hameat mikol ha'amim ki me'ahavat Adonai etchem umishamro et hashivua asher nishba la'avotechem hotzi Adonai etchem biyad chazaka vayiftecha mibeit avadim miyad paro melech mitzrayim viyadata ki Adonai Elohecha hu ha'Elohim Ha'el ha'ne'eman shomer ha'brit v'ha'chesed le'ohavav u'lishomrei mitzvotav le'eleftor u'mishalem lisonav el panav le'ha'avido lo ye'acher lisoneo el panav yishalem lo v'shamarta et ha'mitzvah v'et ha'chukim v'et ha'mishpatim asher anochi mitzavecha hayom la'asotam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chaye olam v'na betochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemehraba v'alimadi v'rakiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chaye dechol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kari v'imru Amen. Yehi shemehraba mivarach v'alam l'alem elemaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemecht kudsha berichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alema v'imru Amen. Maftir is on page 1031, verse 9.
Baruch et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'yadata ki Adonai Elohecha hu ha'Elohim ha'el ha'ne'eman shomer ha'brit v'chesed le'ohavav u'lishomrei mitzvotav le'eleftor u'mishalem lisonav el panav lehavido lo ye'acher lisoneo el panav yishalem lo v'shamarta et ha'mitzvah v'et ha'chukim v'et ha'mishpatim asher anochi mitzavecha hayom la'asotam.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Did someone take what's that? Ya'amod halagdiya. Someone rapping? Ta'amod hagolelet. Please rise for lifting and rapping of the Torah. Oh, and a little helper. I can take this. Yeah.
Zot HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Eitz chaim hi l'machazikim ba v'tomechei ha'me'ushar. Eitz chaim hi l'machazikim ba v'tomechei ha'me'ushar. Derachei darchei noam. Adonai chafetz uman tishov agdil Torah v'yadir Hashiveinu Hashem Hashem Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem Hashiveinu Hashem Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
Eliana will be reading the Haftorah for us on page 1033 in the Chumash, which in another Tanakh would be Isaiah chapter 40, verse 1. I just want to, you can take a seat. Just want to share something very quick. This is called Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat itself. And when I went to Camp Ramah in Ojai, this was a very big Shabbat for me, but also for anybody who sang in what we call Ramah Capella, greatest name ever. And it's because we would sing the first few lines of this Haftorah as a song, which if you were here for Shacharit, I sang as part of the Kedusha. But it is a beautiful tune written by Safam. Oh, is this too close to my face? Sorry. And it's become very popular as an a cappella song sung really all over the world, but is very near and dear to my heart and to anybody really who grew up at Camp Ramah. This is really a staple of the Ramah culture, and we're very excited that Eliana is the one who gets to read it for us. So, though I don't think she'll be singing the song for us. It's on page 10, it's okay. It's on page 1033, and if you would like to follow along with the brachot beforehand and after, they're on page 175 in your Siddur.
Isaiah chapter 40.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza v'divrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'Torah uv'Moshe avdo uv'Yisrael amo uv'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek.
Amen.
Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami, Yomar Elohechem, Dabru, Alev Yerushalayim, Vekiru Elea, Ki Mal'at Tzva'a, Ki Nirtza Avona, Ki Lakcha Miyad Adonai, Ki Flyim Bechol Chatotea, Kol Kore Bamidbar, Panu Derech Adonai, Yashru Ba'arava, Mesila Eloheinu, Kol Yinaseh, V'chol Har V'giva Yishpalu, V'haya He'akov L'mishor, V'arechasim Levik'ah, V'nigla Kevod Adonai, V'ra'u Chol Basar Yachtav, Ki Ki Adonai diber. Kol omer kara ve'amar ma ekra kol habasar chatzir v'chol chasto ketzitz hasadeh yavesh chatzir navel tzitz ki ruach Adonai nashva bo achen chatzir ha'am yavesh chatzir navel tzitz udvar Eloheinu yakum le'olam Al har gavoa alilach mevaseret Zion Harimi v'koach kolech mevaseret Yerushalayim Harimi al tirai imri le'arei Yehuda Hine Elohechem Hine Adonai Elohim bechazak yavo Uzro'o moshlalo Hine scharo ito Ufulato lefanav Kero'ed roho yir'eh Bizra'o yikabetz tlaim Uvcheko yisa alot yinahel Mimadad b'shalo mayim B'shamayim b'zeheret tiken B'chol b'shalish afar ha'aretz B'shakal b'peles harim Ugva'od b'moznaim Mi tiken et ruach Adonai Ve'ish atzato yodinu Et mi no'at vayvinehu Vaylamdehu be'orach mishpat Vaylamdehu da'at V'derech tvunot yodinu Hen goyim kemahar midli Ucheshachak moznaim nechshavu Hen iyim kadak yitol Uvanon ein de ba'er V'chayato ein de olah Kol hagoyim ke'ayin negdo Me'efes v'atahu nechshavu lo Ve'el mi teramun el Umadmut tarchu lo Ha'pesel nasa ha'charash V'tzoref b'zahav yirak enu Urtukot kesef tzoref Hamsukahan truma Et lo yirkav yivchar Charash chacham yivakesh lo Le'achin pesel lo yimod Halo tereu halo tishma'u halo Hugad merosh lachem Halo havinotem Mosudot ha'aretz Hayoshev al chug ha'aretz Ve'yoshvei ha'kachagavim Hanotech adok shamayim Vayimtachem ka'ohel ha'shavet Hanoten roznim le'ayin Shoftei eretz katohu asa Af bal nita'u Af bal zora'u Af bal shoresh ba'aretz giz'am Vegam nashaf bahem vayivashu Usa'ara kakash tisa'em Ve'el mi tedam yuni ve'eshve yomar kadosh Se'umaro menechem ur'u mivara ha'ele Hamotzi ve'mispar tzva'am Lecholam b'shem yikra Merovonim ve'amitz koach Ish lo nedar Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam tzur kol olamim tzadik b'chol adorot Ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'yoseh ha'medaber u'mkayem shechol dvarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman Atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim dvarecha v'davar echad midvarecha chor lo yashuv rikam ki al melech ne'eman v'rachaman ata Baruch Ata Adonai El ha'ne'eman b'chol dvarav Rachem al Tzion ki hi beit chayinu v'lalav nefesh toshia b'meira b'yameinu Baruch Ata Adonai mesamech Tzion b'vaneha Samcheinu Adonai Eloheinu b'Eliyahu hanavi avdecha v'malchut beit David Mashiachecha b'meira yavo v'yagel libeinu al kiso lo yoshev zar v'lo yinchalu od acherim et kvodo ki v'shem chodecha nishbata lo shaloich b'neiro le'olam va'ed Baruch Ata Adonai Magen David Al Torah ve'al Havodah ve'al Nevi'im ve'al Yom HaShabbat hazeh Shenatata lanu Adonai Eloheinu liktusha v'limnucha lechavod ultifaret Al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umbarchim otach יפרח שמך בפי כוחי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Shakoach Eliana. We continue with the service to return the Sefer Torah to the Ark on page 176 in the Lev Shalem. 148 in the Slim Shalom, 412 in the Sim Shalom for Yakum Purkan.
You can,
sure.
no, you
Yeah,
can turn around.
Okay.
Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter.
Yekum Purkan min Shemaya.
Yakum Purkan, Min Shemaya.
Maran Divi Shemaya Bisadachon Kozaman Vidam Ramar. Amen. Yishaberach Avoteinu. V'chol mi shuzachim mitzorchei tzibor v'vinyan Eretz Yisrael be'emuna hakadosh baruch hu yishalim secharam v'yasir mehem koma chala v'yirpa v'chol gufa v'yislach v'chol avonam v'yishlach beracha v'hatzlacha v'chol maaseh yedehem im kol Yisrael achehem v'nomar amen.
A prayer for our country is found on page 177 in the English. Our God and God of our... Oh, sorry. Come on up. I didn't know. No, go there.
Please rise.
The main spotlight. You can stand on this side so we can see it.
My big moment.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, didn't mean to take it from you.
Our God and God of our ancestors, with mercy accept our prayer on behalf of our country and its government.
Pour out your blessing upon this land, upon its inhabitants, upon its leaders, its judges, officers, and officials who faithfully devote themselves to the needs of the public. Help them understand the rules of justice you have decreed, so that peace and security, happiness and freedom will never depart from our land. Adonai, God whose spirit is in all creatures, we pray that your spirit be awakened within all the inhabitants of our land. Uproot from our hearts hatred and malice, jealousy and strife. Plant love and companionship, peace and friendship among the many peoples and faiths who dwell in our nation.
Grant us the knowledge
To judge justly, the wisdom to act with compassion, and the understanding and courage to root out poverty from our land. May it be your will that our land be a blessing to all who dwell on earth, and may you cause all peoples to dwell in friendship and freedom. Speedily fulfill the vision of your prophets. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. For all of them, from the least of them to the greatest, shall know me, and let us say Amen. Did someone take the prayer for Israel? No. Okay. Prayer for Israel, page 1. So I knew that one was missing, Bonnie. I wasn't sure which one. Page 178 in the Hebrew. Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'goalo, Barech Emeninat Yisrael, Reshit Smichat Geulatenu. Hagen aleha be'evrat chastecha, ufros aleha sukat shlomecha. Ushlach orcha v'amitcha lerasheha, sareha ve'yotzeha, v'taknem beitza tova milfanecha, chazek et yedei migne eretz kodshenu, v'hanchilem Eloheinu Yeshua, va'ater nitzachon te'atrem. V'natata shalom ba'aretz, v'simchat olam leyoshveha, v'nomar amen. We'll read responsively with Joey on page 178, a prayer for peace.
May we see the day when war and bloodshed cease, when a great peace will embrace the whole world.
The nation will not threaten nation, and the human family will not again know war.
For all who live on earth shall realize we have not come into being to hate or to destroy. We have come into being to praise, to labor, and to love.
Compassionate God, bless the leaders of all nations with the power of compassion.
Fulfill the promise conveyed in Scripture. I will bring peace to the land, and you shall lie down, and no one shall terrify you.
I will rid the land of vicious beasts, and it shall not be ravaged by war.
Let justice and righteousness flow like a mighty stream. Let God's peace fill the earth as the waters fill the sea. And let us say,
Amen.
Amen. Ashrei, page 181. You may be seated.
Ashrei Yoshevei Beitecha, Odi Hallelujah, Selah. Sham Shadonai Elohav Tila L'David Arim Chalem. Teilat Adonai daber pi v'yivarech kol basar shem kodshel olam va'ed v'anachnu nevarech yah me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah.
Please rise as we return the Torah to the ark.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kiniskav Shemo Levado, Hodo al Eretz V'Shamayim, Vayarem Keren Le'amo, Tila L'chol Chasidav, Livnei Yisrael Am Kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. More LaDavid, Havu Adonai B'nei Elim,
Havu Adonai Kavod V'Oz, Havu Adonai Kivod Hashemo, Ishtachavu Adonai B'Hadrat Kodesh, Kol Adonai Amayim El HaKavod Hirim, Adonai Amayim Rabim, Kol Adonai B'Koach, Kol Adonai B'Hadar, Kol Adonai Shover Arazim, Vayashaver Adonai et Arzei Halvanon, Vayarkidem Kemo Egel Levanon, V'Sirion Kemo Ve'en Remim, Kol Adonai Avotesh, Kol Adonai Yachil Midbar, Yachil Adonai Midbar Kadesh, Kol Adonai Yecholel Ayalot, Vayechesov Yeharot, Uvehechalo Kulo, Kulo Omer Kavod, Adonai Lama Buyashav, Vayeshev Adonai Melech Leolam, Adonai Os Lehamoiten, Adonai Yevarech et Amo Vashalom, Uvnecho Yomar.
Oh, it's so funny. They're coming in.
My uncle in DC.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I was like, wow.
Son is here.
Our darshan this morning is Rabbi Adam Kligfeld.
Was that a woo or a boo?
It was the middle.
Shabbos, everyone. I'm going to take off this wool tallis while I teach. Does anybody not have a sheet? Raise your hand if you don't have one. Maybe some of you identify with this phenomenon. And that is, there are certain circumstances where we find ourselves more challenged to produce words and produce coherent ideas than others. I sometimes experience it based on whom I'm talking to. There are certain people in whose presence I literally feel a greater fluency in expression, a greater ability to say what I want to say. And there's some people in whose presence I feel blocked, clogged, as if something about the dynamic between me and that person makes it more challenging for me to say the words that are in my head. Sometimes it has to do with people in whose presence I feel safe and accepted versus those in whose presence I'm not sure about my standing. Sometimes it's a question of not someone else, but your own mood. One of the personal indications I have for myself on a meta level as to what mood I'm in is related to how fluidly I can create words. I'm not talking about a clinical depression, but we always go up and down in our mood. Sometimes we're high and soaring and feeling good, and sometimes we're just in a lower place. One of the indicators that I'm in a lower place, which gratefully doesn't last very long, is that I don't have the normal ability, or my normal ability, for the words to come out with the fluidity and the fluency that I'm used to. And of course, there are physiological and medical conditions that impact a person's ability to say what is on his or her mind. I also find that sometimes happening in prayer. The great paradox of prayer that you all live and sometimes think about is, of course, going back to the Mishnah, prayer is either A, saying all the words in front of you, getting to the end, getting to the Oseh Shalom, that's prayer, or prayer is your opening your mouth and speaking to the Holy One and going beyond a realm of just a rote ritual. Ideally, at least in the conservative movement, the way we think about it, but I think all movements would agree on some level, we want a fusion. We want a prayer experience that has us saying the words that are in front of us and have been passed down by generations, and we want to have completed the prayer experience thinking that we had a moment of fluid expression to the Holy One. In that way, the Siddur can be a gift, because if you're standing up to pray and you can't even fathom what it means to say your own prayer to God, just follow the Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs to the end of the Amidah and you're there. And sometimes the Siddur is its own obstacle, because we feel an obligation to finish. We feel an obligation to cut the words with our mouths, and then we may wonder when the prayer is over, have we even prayed? So keep those ideas in mind as we jump into Parshat Ve'etchanan, because we're going to get back to this notion of what it means to be in a mode where prayer is fluid and prayer is happening. And if you're following from home, hopefully the text sheet we were able to download, which came in yesterday's, the second Shabbat bulletin that went out. So we start with the first line of the Parsha. For some reason, it came out with some odd spacing in the Hebrew, but hopefully you'll be able to see it. The Parsha begins with Va'etchanan el Adonai. Moses, in a reminiscence, reminder that the Book of Deuteronomy is almost entirely old material. This is not happening in real time. Moses is reminiscing about when he stood before God, lehitchanen, to plead, to ask, ba'etahi lemor, on that very day, in order to say something. What was the content he wanted to say? He was pleading and requesting with God to let him into the land of Israel, even though he had been punished because of hitting the rock, to not be allowed into Israel. And already I've given several Divrei Torah during the week in several different settings, including in today's Taste of Torah, that try to figure out what the word Ve'etchanan actually means.
Rashi reads it against the grain, or at least against what seems obvious in the root, because the way the verb va'et chanan is built suggests that the root is chet nun nun lichanein, to grant. Right? Chonein hada'at is God granting us wisdom. We say that in the Amidah. So va'et chanan seems to be the reflexive version of that, to ask for someone to grant you something, to plead. But Rashi says it's not chanan, it's something else. On va'et chanan, he says, ein chinun. There's no usage of the word chinun, b'chol makom, in any place in the Torah. Ela lashon matnat chinam. He's playing a game here saying, I know it looks like chanan, it's actually chinam with a mem. And what is chinam? Chinam is free, or without reason, or without merit. As in the phrase sinat chinam that we just spent time thinking about on Tisha B'Av, a hatred that has no reason for it. So he says what Moses is saying here is not a plea for God's, to get something specific from God that Moshe has earned. It's from chinam, to get something for free. Even though righteous people such as Moshe have every ability in the world to say, I'm asking you for something, and the reason why I'm asking you for it is because I feel like I've earned it. I'm a righteous person. That's not how righteous people act. That's not modest enough for a righteous person. When a righteous person stands in front of God, you don't display your credentials. You don't say, look how much I've earned this, God. You simply try to react or be in relationship to God's flowing beneficence and say, God, if you will it, I will accept it, but I'm not going to plead my case. Davar acher, another way of reading it, ze echad mi asara leshonot shnikret tefillah. Another way of reading it is that what's happening here is not Moses asking for something specific, but rather Moses is in the most elemental way praying. What's interesting about Rashi's formulation here, he seems to be creating a dissonance between asking for something and prayer. Why is it interesting? Because so many of our prayers seem to be us asking for something. Give me wisdom, give me healing, give me a good season, give me rest. Rashi's saying it's either Moshe asking for something or it is prayer. As if to say that the essence of prayer is not making a request of God. Other people read the Va'et Chanan as suggesting that Moses was indeed standing in front of God saying, here are my merits, God, here's what I've earned. As a result of that, please, come on, let me in the land of Israel. Both of those approaches suggest Moses, or at least the first of Rashi's approaches and the other approaches, suggest Moses standing for God, lacking something, wanting something, and asking God of it. Okay, turn to the next page for an entirely different way of reading what was happening in this moment. This is a commentary by Rav Pinchas Halevi Horowitz. He lived in the 18th and 19th century, first in Galicia, which I think is actually where he lived was actually now the country of Ukraine and Germany. Efshar leva'er lefi Chazal. Let's understand this phrase Va'et Chanan el Adonai that I pleaded to God the way the sages Chazal Chachamenu Zichronam Lebracha, our sages of blessed memory, said about the topic on page 4 of Masechet Brachot. And now he's quoting from the Talmud. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, one of the great sages from the land of Israel, said, Batchila, in the beginning, what beginning? B'hatchalat tfilat Shmona Esrei. When we begin the prayer of the Shmona Esrei, and just to break down that term, Shmona Esrei means 18. It refers to the 18 original blessings that were part of the weekday Amidah. A 19th was added in at some point, so we no longer say a Shmona Esrei, we say a Cha Esrei, but no one calls it that. And in rabbinic nomenclature, the word Shmona Esrei refers to any Amidah, including, for instance, an Amidah on Shabbat, where there are not 18 or 19 blessings, but 7. So it's just become a term for the Amidah. So we begin the Amidah by saying, Adonai sfatai tiftach ufi yagid tilatecha. God, open up my lips, that my mouth, ufi yagid, will recite tihilatecha, your praise. Depending on how and where you learned how to daven, this is also the moment where we begin our Amidah with choreography, right? There are 6 words in that phrase, 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. Adonai sfatai tiftach ufi yagid tihilatecha. Another Jewish choreographic moment that has become so rote. When was the last time? You don't have to answer out loud, but answer inside yourself.
You use those 6 words and those 6 steps to try to transform yourself into a person who's more ready to pray than beforehand. Every once in a while, I remember to, and it helps. We say those 6 words. Ve'inyano kamosh muvab Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. And this was related to something that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa, another rabbi, said farther along in Masechet Brachot. She'amar, this is what he said, Im shigurat tfilati bafi. If I am aware that my prayer is flowing well, which does not necessarily mean that I'm pronouncing well, but there's a sense of movement, of momentum, of aliveness, of vitality to my prayer. Yodea ani, that's how I know. Shehu mukubal, that's how I know that it's being received. Now, he's making a pretty strong theological comment here, as if he can actually tell whether God is receiving his prayers based on how easy it is for him to pray. But I identify with it, because in the context that I mentioned before, I know that I'm saying something of meaning and of worth and has more of a chance of being received by the other person if it's coming out fluidly. And if I'm stumbling, or I'm tripping, or I'm pausing too much, I'm aware I'm not communicating myself in the right way, and that makes me nervous that it's not being accepted by the other person. For him, this is about him and God. I think it also happens between us and other people. Vezohu, and this is this rabbi's commentary on Be'et Chanan. That's what's happening Ve'et Chanan el Adonai, when Moses said, I pleaded to God. But B'hat Chala, in the beginning, Lemor. The word Lemor is at the end of the verse. So if you go back to the verse, Ve'et Chanan el Adonai Ba'et Hahi Lemor, I prayed to God at that time, saying. We normally translate that as a gerund, saying. He's translating it as an infinitive. I prayed to God. What did I pray to God to do? Lay more, just for the ability to speak. This is a very different read than Rashi's and other commentaries. The only thing, according to Rabbi Horowitz, Moshe was asking God for help to do was to pray itself. Pray as the ends, not the means. Pray as its own spiritual experience, not in order to gain A, B, C, D, E, or F. This read has Moshe reminiscing not that he was standing in front of God and saying, please, please, God, let me to the land of Israel. But rather standing before God saying, God, will you help me just get to a place where prayer is real, where prayer is happening? It's obviously anachronistic, but lead into it, right? We don't really have this notion, even in the text itself, of Moses davening, right? The rabbis like to read back onto certain Torah texts and say, Yitzchak was davening Mariv when Rivka met him. But if we just follow the text itself, this is not Moshe, davening Shachrit, Mincha, or Musaf. But this is Moshe simply asking to be in a relationship with God where prayer will flow. Hitchananti she'uchal ledaber. The only thing I asked is that I'm able to speak in your presence. She'adonai svatai tiftach. That God will open up my lips. I wonder what our prayer would be like. Today, tomorrow, whenever we pray. If we prayed the way this interpretation imagines Moshe prayed. Even if the words seem to be words of requests, maybe that's just supposed to anchor us in a place so that we don't go far afield. But our only aspiration in the prayer that we do and that we're about to do in Musaf, our only aspiration is to be able to be in a moment of prayer. Not that that moment of prayer bring us something specific. What's fascinating to me about this read of Moshe, of his requesting of God, that God help him pray to God, is Moshe's history with speech. Right? Moshe's history with speech is really an interesting one. We all know from the text and from the Midrashic explanations that Moshe struggled to speak. In fact, at the burning bush, look at the next source, 4th chapter, Shemot, verse 10. You know these words in Hebrew or in English or both. Vayomer Moshe el Adonai, Moses said to God, this is after God had given him several opportunities or has explained to him several times what the task was in front of him. Be Adonai, please God, lo ish dvarim anochi. I am not a man of dvarim, of words. I'm not comfortable speaking. Gam mitmol, gam mishilshom. Neither yesterday nor the day before yesterday, which is understood to mean either going backwards in time, gam me'az dabercha el avdecha, nor even now in this moment that you're speaking to me. Ki chvad peh. My mouth is heavy, I can't get the words out. Uchvad lashon. My tongue is awkward in my mouth. I just can't produce. Anochi, that's how I am. Is Moshe there speaking about a physiological impediment? Is this a stutter? Is this that his tongue was too big for his mouth? Or is it this how he experienced his body? His body was actually fine, but there was some kind of psycho-emotional blockage that prevented him from producing speech the way he wanted to. And of course, what's radically wonderful about Moshe identifying himself in that way and the way the Torah goes on is that Moshe becomes our most renowned and fluid and oft-quoted speaker in all of Jewish and Israelite history. Turn the page. It's beautiful one-line midrash from Midrash Tanchuma. Hapesh Amar, the very same mouth that said, quote, Lo ish dvarim anochi, I am not a man of darim, a man of words. Amar said, Eila hadvarim, the Book of Deuteronomy. Let me just break that down for you in case the allusions are not clear. Moshe starts off saying, Dvarim, words are not mine. I don't have access to them. And then he writes the book of Dvarim. He is the main speaker, 93%. I made that number up, but it's a high number. 93%-ish of the entire fifth book of the Torah is Moses engaged in the activity that he said in his first encounter with God he was not able to do. What did he overcome? How did he get to a place where Dvarim came out of his mouth easily? Was it just self-confidence? Or is Rabbi Horowitz correct that when Moses was pleading before God, he was not pleading to enter the land, he was just pleading for the ability to speak, to say, to be in relationship with something beyond himself. I think there's a lot for us to ponder in this one approach to Moshe's stance. And it might be helpful to us in our own prayer journey, which I hope all of you consider yourself to be on in some active way, right? I hope that even if the primary reason you're here this morning in person or on Zoom is for community, or the primary reason you're here is for cholent, or the primary reason for here is just because rhythm, I hope there's at least a piece of every single one of you who says, I'm here sitting in this chair today because I'm on a prayer journey, and my prayer is not yet what it could be, and I'm dissatisfied. That's a very sacred dissatisfaction. By the way, guilty as charged. I am on a prayer journey. I am not yet the prayer, as one describing prayer, someone who I pray, that I'd like to be. There are moments where I soar. There are moments where it's broken and not filled with any vitality. And so I'm constantly looking for sources of wisdom from our text and from elsewhere to open up my own mouth so that when I speak to God, the speech itself, the prayer itself is what has merit. Not even the content of the words, but the experience of being at prayer is its own end. This is where one of the places where I believe Rabbi Abraham Joshua Hessel is the most helpful in translating to us things which are in the realm of the esoteric and the mystery into pathways that can help us on our own journey. So we have 4 different quotes here from Rabbi Abraham Joshua Hessel on prayer, 4 of 100 that I could have used. Each one of them is saying something slightly different, but I believe whether or not he knew of this commentary from Rabbi Horowitz is connected to the other way of imagining Moshe at prayer, not demanding something, but just asking for the ability to be in a prayer moment itself. By the way, the reason why I'm not asking people to speak and I'm calling on you is because I have learned from people who are watching on Zoom and on live stream that it's hard because you all don't have a microphone in front of you. I know in Beiteinu services normally there's a lot of interaction. I want there to be, but I'm also sensitive to how we do this in hybrid. But if there's something you want to say, please raise your hand. Prayer is a arrival at the border. Just that sentence is fabulous. We think of prayer sometimes as getting somewhere specific and getting something out of it. According to Hessel, if you've arrived at that liminal place between normal human behavior and comportment to something which is hovering on a relationship with the divine, you've done it. The dominion is thine, meaning, God, I'm standing at the border. I've reached the edge of the area of reality that is yours.
Take away from me all that may not enter thy realm. He's talking there about concepts and stances, not people. Meaning, the only thing I want to do when I stand for prayer and Musaf in a few minutes, independent of the words coming out of my mouth, is to rid myself of the things that get in the way of me praying versus not praying. I want to reinforce one more time, that is a very different understanding of prayer than prayer to get something. Prayer is just to arrive somewhere. Whether you're davening on Shabbat or Rosh Hashanah or Tuesday morning, prayer is simply to arrive at God's boundary. Same basic page in Man's Quest for God. We do not refuse to pray, rather we abstain from it. That's an interesting distinction. It's not that some of us refuse to pray, but he's saying the problem with prayer is not the refusal. You're saying, no, I'm not going to pray today. It's that I do stand for prayer, but I still abstain. I am standing for the Amidah, but still somehow I'm not engaging in the experience. We ring the hollow bell of selfishness rather than absorb the stillness that surrounds the world. My translation from one English to another, we stand in prayer thinking that our obligation and our duty and what's best for us is to ask for something rather than simply be present in a divine stillness. And sometimes the Siddur is the problem because the Siddur seems to suggest that we're supposed to be asking for things, not according to Hessel. Futile self-indulgence brings us out of tune with the gentle song of nature's writing, as if to say prayer is not about me indulging, gaining, growing, but simply to be alert to the world around us, of mankind striving for salvation. We dwell on the edge of mystery and we ignore it. That is a heck of a critique, wasting our souls, risking our stake in God. You're going to have an opportunity in about 7 minutes to figure out whether this prayer experience is you standing on the edge, peering into something that might be possible and just not going there, or simply allowing God's presence to fill you. Yossi, your hand is up. And for those that are watching on Zoom, I'll try to paraphrase what Yossi says. Yossi has a question. So Yossi is asking a question that goes directly to this topic. Is there a specific way of praying? Is it only what the Siddur says, or can I make my own prayer? That's a 2,000-year-old machloket. Back in Mishnah Brachot, where one of the rabbis in the Mishnah says, what is prayer? Finishing the Amidah. And the rabbi says, what is prayer? Your own personal supplications. And I would like to say that it's a combination thereof. I do believe that the Siddur is meaningful and important. And I do try to have the Siddur be my guide as I pray. But I also try to get into a mode like floating above the words or pausing from the words and saying, my goal here is not for my mouth to articulate syllables. My goal is to have an experience that is entirely different than having a conversation with someone that I know and love, or talking, or engaging, or being transactional. So it's some combination of, and Hessel too. Hessel was a very traditional Jew. I'm sure every morning Hessel got up, put on tefillin, and said the Shemona Esrei. But I like to think that Hessel was trying, while he was saying the Amidah, to almost be beyond the words that he felt halachically obligated to say. Look at the next quote. The idea of prayer may seem to be the assumption of man's ability to accost God. I love that word, accost. Right? Accosting God is sort of the normal way we understand Va'et Hanan. Moshe stood in front of God and said, hey, I need something from you. Pestering God. That's how some people think of prayer. To lay our hopes, sorrows, and wishes before him. I'm sure you've thought of prayer about that in the past. That's my job, to stand before God, to imagine God is here and say, this is what I need right now. And by the way, I left the language gendered because I don't want to change Heshel's language, but obviously we think of God not only in a gendered way. But this assumption is a paraphrase rather than a precise expression of what we believe. We do not feel that we possess a magic power of speaking to the infinite, as if we'll somehow unlock God's storehouse and get that thing that we wanted. We merely witness the wonder of prayer, the wonder of man's addressing himself to the eternal. Can you think of prayer that way? That if you have gotten to a place of witnessing something wondrous, that is prayer, and there's no higher version of it. Contact with him is not our achievement. It's a gift, coming down to us from on high like a meteor, rather than rising up like a rocket. If you get to that place, which often does not last, that does not bring you to a pat on the back. Wow, I did it. No. I just positioned myself so that the divine flow somehow reached me and enveloped me. Before the words of prayer come to the lips, the mind must believe in God's willingness to draw near to us and in our ability to clear the path for his approach. I'm going to say that in different words. Hessel would say that the Amidah that you're about to say, do not even pretend to say it if you don't have some faith that in the experience of prayer, you're going to touch something otherworldly. This is not a theological test, right? This is not whether you're theologically well or unwell. But it's a waste of human moments to stand at prayer and not assume that there's some chance that you're going to experience something transcendent. Such belief is the idea that leads us towards prayer. That's the only pathway, according to Hessel, to get into prayer. And finally, my favorite one-line quote from Rashi on prayer. The issue of prayer is not prayer. The issue of prayer is God. That seems inscrutable. The issue of prayer is not prayer. The issue of prayer is God. Can anyone try to put that into non-Heschelian language? How could it be the issue of prayer is not prayer? Joey?
I think that the way I interpret it is that God gives us the ability to pray to God.
So what Joey said is that God gives us the ability to pray to God, and so therefore the prayer is both the thing I'm getting to that moment and might come on the other side of it, but it's all about a contact with the Holy One. Anyone else? The issue of prayer is not prayer. The issue of prayer is God. Larry?
Two things. One related to what you just said, that prayer is more of a catalyst than the object itself. I think there's also a lot of focus on getting prayer right, or getting prayer finished, or getting prayer perfect, getting all the words, and that's, again, focusing on the wrong area.
Great. So Larry said two things. One, Heschel might be saying that prayer is a catalyst, a means for us to get closer to the Holy One, as if the goal is not prayer but God, and also that prayer sometimes confuses us because it's as if it's a question of right or wrong, right? And if you focus on the right or the wrong way to pray, you've forgotten that actually what it's really about is a commune with the Holy One. Now, I want to say something important, because if you're reading this and you're thinking, but I don't know what I believe about God. I don't know where I stand. I don't know what my theology is, right? I'm a observant, traditional, active Jew, and sometimes I feel like an agnostic, right? Does that mean that I can't do what Heschel's asking me to do? Well, raise your hand if you're somewhat agnostic, right? Raise your hand if you haven't had a bolt of lightning clarifying for you all the mysteries of the divine. We are all, whether we like to admit it to ourselves or other people, healthily agnostic. If we weren't, we'd probably be living a more absolutist life. We do wonder, we don't know. So how do we make sense of this line if the word God is sometimes itself an obstacle? I think what Hessel might say is the God that you're not sure you believe in is not the God that Hessel is invoking here. The God that you're not sure you believe in is not the God who fashioned the world with God's hands, who spoke directly to Moshe, who, think of the kindergarten image, who sits on a throne bestowing gifts or not. That's not the God that you should be invoking here. The God that you're invoking in this line is the human jumping away from a purely human realm into something that is beyond human comprehension, and you only realize that you were in that moment when it's over, to throw Hessel and Buber against one another. You only realize that you were in an I-thou moment where you had a personal connection to something beyond you. The moment you realize that you're in it, it's over, because you've broken that trance. This conversation might turn into a longer series, or longer class series at the synagogue, because some people have been asking me for us to do a slower inquiry into what prayer is, because we do a lot of praying in our community, right? Particularly people who come to Daily Minyan and are regular on Shabbat. You are spending a lot of hours of your life in prayer. And we're heading into a season in which we're going to spend a lot of hours together in prayer. Therefore, it behooves us, at least every once in a while, for us to ask ourselves, what is it that we're doing in those moments? Why are our feet together? What does it mean to read ancient words that rabbinic men wrote 2,000 years ago? Is that all that there is? Or is there something even before that that is higher and more noble? And that is simply departing from the realm of human interaction, arriving at the border of something beyond us, and considering that arrival to be its own triumph. In a few minutes, like in 60 seconds, we're going to be at prayer again. I do want you to look at the words. I do want you to feel a certain reverence for what's been transmitted down to us. I do want you to imagine yourself as having the same ability that Moshe had to speak to God and get responses. But I'm afraid if that's all that you're doing in prayer, you're going to leave either bored or disappointed. So mostly, at least for this prayer experience we're about to have, I want you to imagine Moshe in the realm that we've been discussing today, not asking God for rest, not asking God for bounty, not asking God for healing, not asking God to take care of your family, but simply asking God to give you the power to approach prayer as its own end. Maybe that will happen, maybe it will not, but aspiring to it may be the highest form of a prayerful experience. Michael, last comment.
Far be it from me to be a shill for Temple Betham podcasts, but at Daily Minion, which I've heard happens, I don't want to, Tuesday morning, Rabbi Avi Havivi's Siddur class, you probably have to scroll back a year maybe, but he goes through, when he's teaching the first bracha of the Amidah, he shared what his experience is really like word by word, and how his what he aims for his experience to be during that one bracha of the Amidah, and it is actually a quite remarkable and instructive listen. I think I've listened to it 3 or 4 times.
Wow.
It's one of them that I never deleted. It speaks exactly to the what am I trying to do when I pray, and what's actually happening in my body.
Thank you, Michael. For those who are not here in person, Michael just made a public commitment to come to Daily Minion every day for the next year, which I just think that's incredible, Michael. Good for you. Good for you. What Michael actually said is that our dear Rabbi Dr. Avi Havivi every Tuesday morning teaches a 10 or 15-minute Siddur class right after Daily Minion. It's all available on the podcast, and Michael says there's an episode about a year ago, you said? Yeah. Where Avi talks about the specific kavanah, the specific intent that he has just during the first paragraph of the Amidah, and what Michael says is worth listening to and worth growing from. So we'll end it here only because we want services to end at some point, not because the conversation is over. And here we are, faced with yet another opportunity to ask God just for the ability to pray itself. Shabbat Shalom. Do you want to just have the conversation next time?
Sure. Isn't that what you just told us to do? Page 184, Chatzi Kaddish. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba ve'amad divra kiutei ve'amlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yom echon uv'chayei decho beit Yisrael bagala uvizman kari veimeru amen yishmer Rabba mevorach leolam olam eomaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitala shemei dekudesha berichu le'ila min kol berchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'yimeru amen.
It seems like a terrible non sequitur after what we just were discussing for me to give you a page number and tell you what to say and when and how, because that's the paradox of prayer. But this is our vault, our launching pad for hopefully an experience that will be a little bit other. We are about to do the Amidah.
Rabbi Schatz will begin on 185 or 156 in the Slim Shalom, 4:30 in the Sim Shalom. We will join in for the Kedusha responsibly on 187, and then you go back to page 185 and say the Amidah silently to yourself, or say nothing, but just try to pray.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim v'Konei Hakol v'Zocher Chastei Avot U'Mevi Goel Lifnei V'neihem Le'mahan Shemo Be'ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham U'Fokei Tzara Atah Gibor Le'Olam Adonai Mechayim Eitim Atah Rav Lehoshia Mechakel L'Chaim B'Chesed Mechayim Eitim B'Rachamim Rabim Somech Noflim B'Rofei Cholim Umatir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Michamocha Bal Gevurot Umido Melech Melech Memit Umechaye Umatzmiach Yeshua V'neman Atalei Achayot Metim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei HaMeitim Naharitzcha v'nakdishcha kesotziach tzarfei kodesh hamakdishim shimcha b'kodesh kakatuv al yaneviecha v'kara ze el ze ve'amar yanai nanai nanai yanai nanai yanai Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot Melech La'aretz Kevodo, Kevodo Malei Olam, Meshartav Shoalim Zelazeh Ayeh, Mekom Kevodo, Leumatam Baruch Yomeru, Yainanai, Yananai, Yananai, Yanai, Nanai, Yananai, Yananai, Baruch Adonai Mimkomo Hu Yifen Berachamim Ve'yachodam Am Yachadim Shemo Erev Avoker Bechol Yom Tamid Pamayim Ba'ava Shema Omrim Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Hu Eloheinu Avinu Hu Malkeinu Moshienu Vehu Yashmienu Berachamav Shenit Le'enei Kochai Liod Lachem Le'elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem Uvdivrei Kodshecha Katuv Lemor Yimloch Adonai Le'olam Elohayach Tzion Ledor Vador Hallelujah Ledor Vador Nagid Golecha Ulenetzach Netzachim Kedushatcha Nadish Ledor Vador Nagid Golecha Ulenetzach Melech Netzachim, Kedushatcha Nadish, Veshivcha Eloheinu Mipinu, Lo Yamush Le'olam Va'ed, Ki Melech Gadol V'Kadosh Ata. Baruch Atah Adonai Ha'el HaKadosh. If you have not yet finished your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. Kaddish Shalem is on page 203. Yitkada v'kedashem me'raba be'hamad divrak yutevim lichmachute b'chayechanu v'mechanu chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'agalav izman kari v'imeru amen yeishme rabba mevorach le'olam lo me'omaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalosh medikudesha b'richu le'ela min kol bechata v'shirata tush bechata v'nechamata da'amiran be'alma v'imeru amen תתקבל צאתנו ותהון דכל ישראל קודם ובהון דבי שמיה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבין שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. אין כאלוהינו אין כאדוננו אין כמלכנו אין כמושיענו מכאלוהינו מכאדוננו מכמלכנו מכמושיענו נודה לאלוהינו נודה לאדוננו נודה למלכנו נודה למושיענו ברוך אלוהינו ברוך אדוננו ברוך מלכנו ברוך מושיענו אתה הוא אלוהינו אתה הוא אדוננו אתה הוא מלכנו אתה הוא מושיענו אתה הוא שכתירו אבותינו לפניך אקטורת הסמים. Please rise. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה שלא שם חלקנו כהם וגורלנו ככל המונם ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא שהוא נוטה שמיים ויסד ארץ המשה וקרא בשמי מחשב. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני המלך לעולם ועד ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Mourner's Kaddish, page 207. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shemei rabba be'alma divra kirute ve'amlich malchute b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Israel ba'agala u'v'zman kari ve'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabba mevarach le'olam lomei almaya yit barach ve'yishtabach ve'yit pa'ar ve'yit romam ve'yit naseh V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekudesha b'rechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Yasher Koach to Eliana and to Michael Shmansky and to Rick for reading Torah and to Eliana also for Haftorah. Thank you, Bonnie, for, what do they call it? Greeting. I was going to say ushering. That's not what you called it, though. For greeting, it was lovely to have a greeter this morning and always lovely to use this shtender in Larry's memory. Yasher Koach to Rabbi Kligfeld for davening and for teaching.
And right back at you.
Well, thank you so much. This evening sorry, Joey. And Joey for leading Torah service. And again, belated happy birthday to you. Thank you, Larry. Sorry? Double chai. Wow, very exciting. This evening at 6:50, Jackie Honig will be teaching. She's about to leave for Israel and really no longer a rabbinic resident, but we love her so much and she's been so supported by this community that she is doing a teaching in memory of her father. It's a week past Shloshim? A week and a half past Shloshim for her father, and so she's marking that Shloshim with us at Sudah Shlishit this evening here on, actually, I don't know, is it Corning 8 or is it Ziering? Do you remember? Outside at Temple Betham. If you would like to join us, that's at 6:50 p.m. Here? Is that what you were saying?
So,
yeah, okay, it's here. No, we're not stalling. I just was wondering if there was another announcement.
We are stalling.
Oh, we are stalling.
So,
I was not stalling. I didn't know we were stalling.
So that elusive Temple Beth Am joint Kiddush, which happens once every 37 years when the stars are aligned and a werewolf is howling on the mountaintop. We're all going to have a single Kiddush together. So we're waiting to see how close Library Minyan is from finishing up. We want to thank someone who wants to remain anonymous for sponsoring and upgrading today's Kiddush beyond just the normal. Our normal Kiddush is cholent and some cookies, and a lovely and devoted and generous member of our community said, why not make it nicer for everybody? So we want to thank them, and perhaps it'll inspire other people in the community to make that same decision. So we are going to wait, because if we're going to do a joint Kiddush, we should all say Kiddush together. But when we start seeing the trickle of Library Minyan, we'll sing Adon Olam in a second, and when we see the trickle of Library Minyaners coming, we will do Kiddush. Jennifer Lowe, our ritual vice president, also wanted me to ask everybody to remember that, again, this is kind of connected to the things I was talking about before. We do hold minyan in this community twice a day, 365 days a year. We proudly believe that we're the only on-time, every single day, fully egalitarian daily minyan west of Chicago. There are many communities that have, and this is not a better or worse, but we're proud of this, might have evening minyan every day, but they have it at the same time throughout the year. Ours travels based on when sundown is, so we're doing an on-time mincha and on-time mariv. And that requires presence and support from the community, whether you're a regular davener or not. The mornings are usually not a problem at all, but evenings are sometimes an issue. So if you would like to both recommit for yourself to regular tefillah and or to support the community, we would love to have you. There's a WhatsApp chat that we use to let people know when we're a few people short. You can join that chat by contacting Michael Harris, our daily minyan gabbai, and that way, if you're in the area and we're looking for one or two and you're available, you can come support. Jen?
You did a very good job.
Jen's going to approve of what I just said.
They're doing Kiddush.
Oh, Library Minyan is doing Kiddush.
Yeah.
Oh, then we should do Kiddush.
We should. Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed today's drash, by the way. And I just want to say that
keep going like that. That was good.
Sometimes prayer is being present. And I had asked the rabbi if we could make a plea to have people attend minyan. In the summer it is hard, and sometimes prayer is about being present, if not for yourself, then for others who may be saying Kaddish. So I invite you to join me at 7. We can talk after, we can talk before. So please make a commitment, even if it's one day a week. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jen. And also a reminder that whenever you see an email going out from the community about a Shiva minyan, that should stimulate you to one or more things. Number one, to go pay a Shiva call. I've written about this before in the past. You don't pay a Shiva call only because of how well or personally you know the person. You pay a Shiva call because it's a mitzvah, it's an obligation. And so every email that comes out from the community that announces a Shiva, you should respond to on some level. It also means that on those days, we're supporting 2 minyanim, both in the building and at the Shiva home. So if you can't make it to the Shiva home, that might be an evening that you specifically come to Daily Minyan. Library Minyan has arrived, so let's actually go straight to Kiddush, and you can do your own Adon Olam at your own pace. Rabbi Shas, ready? Please rise for Kiddush. V'sham v'nei Yisrael Shabbat, l'asor Shabbat l'dor tambri dolam beini uvein b'nei Yisrael ti lilam ki sheishim mastar anay d'shamayim v'daretz v'yom hashvi Shabbat v'yanafar shachor yomo Shabbat l'kadosho sheishim mitavo v'yasita kol machtach v'yom hashvi Shabbat l'nay lecha lo taseh kol malacha ata u'v'ncha v'techa avdecha malchu v'techa v'gercha shebishrecha ki sheishim mastar anay d'shamayim v'daretz et hayam kol asher ba'am v'yanach v'yom hashvi al kein berach Adonai Shemo Shabbat v'kadoshehu sarim aranan v'rabanan v'rabotai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Ooh, warm grape juice. It's almost wine.
Yeah.
Exactly. I don't want the egg.
Yeah. I think it's gluten-free, at least it was last week. Nope. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam motzi lechem min haaretz.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
It is not. It is raisin. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think I was there. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,